I remember lying in that ICU bed, tubes snaking into my arms, the rhythmic beeping of machines my only lullaby, and realizing with a clarity that chilled me to the bone, my wife, Sarah, had chosen her sister's wedding over my life. My actual, physical life. To understand how I got to that sterile, fluorescent-lit room in Portland, you have to go back a few weeks. I'd been ignoring a persistent backache for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I dragged myself to the doctor. That's when Dr. Miller showed me the scan, pointing to this jagged white mass, an 8mm kidney stone. Pure agony, he called it. He explained it was too large to pass, already causing a blockage, and my kidney function was plummeting. Surgery, he said, within days, or risk permanent damage. The kicker? $12,000 out of pocket. Our insurance had an astronomical deductible we hadn't come close to hitting. But I wasn't worried. Sarah and I had been married 6 years. We'd always been on the same page about money, splitting everything, building an emergency fund for exactly this kind of situation. We'd sacrificed vacations, nice dinners, all to squirrel away nearly $18,000. Driving home from the doctor's office that afternoon, I actually felt a surge of gratitude. This was it. This was what we saved for. I walked into our apartment in Portland, and there was Sarah at the kitchen table, laptop open, surrounded by what looked like wedding magazines. I remember thinking, how sweet, she's helping her sister Chloe plan, even with the wedding only 10 days away. I sat across from her and laid it all out, the stone, the surgery, the urgency. She nodded, concerned, asking about recovery and pain management. A wave of relief washed over me. I had a partner who would face this with me. Then I said the words that shattered everything. So, we'll need to pull $12,000 from the emergency fund. That's exactly what we saved it for, right? I expected immediate agreement, maybe a squeeze of my hand. Instead, her face shifted. This mix of panic and guilt I'd never seen before, and my stomach dropped even before she spoke. She started talking fast. Chloe had wedding finance problems. The venue hiked their price, catering needed a bigger deposit, Liam's family had backed out. Sarah said Chloe had come to her crying 3 weeks ago, heartbroken, facing a cancelled wedding after invites went out. Sarah, my wife, told me she'd made a decision in that moment to help her sister. Family supports family. She transferred $14,000 to Chloe's account. A loan, she insisted, to be paid back in 6 months. I sat there, reeling. She kept talking, defensive. Not a gift, a temporary loan. Chloe and Liam signed a promissory note. She'd been planning to tell me, but the timing never felt right. I asked her, why make a $14,000 decision without consulting me? Our shared money? Our shared safety net? She said she knew I'd overthink it, try to talk her out of it. The argument that followed lasted 3 agonizing hours, moving from room to room in our apartment. I kept explaining, this wasn't about Chloe or the wedding. It was about unilateral financial decisions impacting both of us, about taking money specifically for emergencies like the one I was currently facing. Sarah circled back. Chloe would pay us back, with interest. The wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Your surgery can wait 1 more week until I can pull some money from other sources. It's not like you're dying. It's just a kidney stone. People deal with those all the time. I reminded her the doctor said delay was dangerous. I already had a low-grade fever. Kidney damage was permanent. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. Everyone exaggerates medical issues. My uncle had one and just drank lemon water. I pulled up the medical papers, showing her the urologist's capitalized, highlighted warnings: surgical intervention urgent, kidney function decline, risk of sepsis. She barely glanced at them. Chloe's wedding was in 10 days. Asking me to postpone your surgery by 1 week wouldn't kill you. You can wait. It's her special day. The finality in her voice, like my health was negotiable against a party, made something inside me crack. I moved to the guest bedroom that night. Over the next 2 days, my condition worsened. I was stuck in this nightmare, needing surgery I couldn't afford because my wife had drained our emergency fund. Yes, I started thinking of it as theft, even if legally it wasn't. The dull ache became sharp, stabbing pains that stole my breath. My fever climbed. Sarah noticed my decline but minimized it, bringing Tylenol, reminding me every few hours about Chloe's rehearsal dinner, how she needed to focus on preparations. On the third morning after my diagnosis, I woke up burning from the inside out. Stumbled to the bathroom. My urine was pink and cloudy. My temperature hit 103.2. I knew what this meant. The doctor had explained it: fever, urinary symptoms, blocked kidney equals infection. Infection in a blocked system could become sepsis in hours. Sepsis could take your life faster than most people realized. I texted my brother, Mark, then called an Uber to the emergency room. Sarah had already left to help Chloe with dress alterations. I couldn't wait for her. The ER doctor took one look at my chart, started 4 antibiotics immediately. Early stage sepsis. Emergency surgery, right now. Not tomorrow, not in a few hours. As soon as an OR was ready. They admitted me directly to the ICU. Lying there, IVs running, monitors beeping, nurses rushing, I texted Sarah. She responded 3 hours later, saying she'd come by after the rehearsal dinner, that Chloe really needed her support, that I was in good hands. I didn't reply. I was being prepped for surgery. And I just realized something that should have been obvious days ago. My wife had chosen her sister's wedding over my life. She'd let me deteriorate to the brink of organ failure because she didn't want to admit she'd made a catastrophic financial decision. Prioritizing flower arrangements and seating charts over my kidney function. They wheeled me to the operating room around 8 p.m. I imagined Sarah, probably toasting Chloe and Liam at some fancy restaurant. I went under anesthesia, not knowing if my kidney could be saved, or if the infection had spread too far. The last thing I heard was a nurse saying my wife had called. And I felt nothing. Just this cold, empty space where my feelings for Sarah used to be. While she was picking out an outfit and curling her hair, I was fighting for my life because she couldn't be honest about money 3 weeks earlier. I woke up 3 days later. Tubes everywhere, a pain in my side like a baseball bat. The nurse explained the operation took longer than expected, the infection had spread. They'd saved my kidney, but the damage was significant. I'd been unconscious for 72 hours, my body battling sepsis. "You're lucky to be alive," she said. That phrase echoed. I'd been hours from complete organ failure. When my eyes finally focused, my brother Mark was slumped in a chair beside me, looking like he hadn't slept. He'd driven 6 hours from Eugene the night of my ER text and had been camping out ever since. He told me Sarah had shown up once, on the second day, while I was unconscious. Stayed 20 minutes, mostly on her phone, texting about wedding details. He wanted to throw her out but didn't want a scene in the ICU. She'd left some gas station flowers, the cheap ones next to the lottery tickets, and promised to return. The hospital billing department came by that afternoon. $18,000. Emergency surgery, ICU stay, out-of-network doctors. My out-of-pocket maximum was obliterated. I'd be paying this off for years. I kept thinking, we had $18,000 in savings 3 weeks ago, that money would have covered the original surgery with change. Instead, here I was, with permanent kidney damage and a massive medical bill, because my wife decided her sister's party was more important. Sarah finally showed up later that day. She was wearing a new sundress, probably for one of the wedding events. She had this bright, fake smile that vanished the second she saw my face. She tried to act concerned, asking about my pain, the food. But everything felt distracted, like she was reading a script. Then she said the line that ended our marriage, "I'm so glad you're doing better, but did you really need to have the surgery right then? I mean, the wedding is in 3 days, and I've barely been able to help Chloe." She said it like I'd chosen the most inconvenient time to nearly die, like my sepsis was a scheduling conflict we could have worked around with better planning. I asked if she understood I'd nearly died. That sepsis kills people. Doctors told me another 6 hours and I might not have made it. She waved her hand dismissively. Doctors always exaggerate. Obviously, I was fine. Then she actually used the word inconvenient to describe my emergency surgery. Said the timing had been really inconvenient for everyone. That was the moment I stopped seeing her as my wife. She became a stranger who happened to share my last name. Someone whose priorities were so fundamentally different from mine, we might as well have been from different planets. After she left, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the small moments over the past 6 years I'd ignored. Times she'd chosen her family over our marriage. Made decisions without consulting me. Dismissed my concerns. I'd always told myself she was just close with her family, that her loyalty was admirable. Now I saw it for what it truly was, a toxic codependency where Chloe's wants would always trump my actual needs. That evening, from my hospital bed, using the phone they'd given me to order meals, I called my lawyer, Mr. Thompson. We'd worked together years ago. Straightforward, practical, no time for emotions. I explained the situation clinically: emergency fund withdrawal, delayed surgery, sepsis, the wedding more important than my life. He listened without interruption, then said something that crystallized everything: what you're describing is financial infidelity. Courts take it very seriously, especially when one spouse's decisions directly harm the other. He confirmed I had grounds for divorce. The medical consequences made it even clearer. Then he suggested something I hadn't even considered: a civil claim against Chloe for conversion of funds, arguing she knew the money wasn't freely given. It felt nuclear, but perfectly appropriate. I agreed to both actions. Mr. Thompson said he'd draft the divorce papers immediately. We could do everything digitally. He'd include medical bills and emergency fund statements as evidence. He'd also prepare a separate lawsuit against Chloe for the $14,000 plus interest and legal fees, arguing she had reason to know the money wasn't given with full marital consent. 2 days later, still connected to an IV and heart monitor, I signed the divorce papers on an iPad. My fingers scrolled for a digital signature that felt surreal and final. Mr. Thompson arranged for Sarah to be served that day. He also sent copies to the wedding venue with a legal notice about the disputed funds. I knew this would blow up the wedding, but I'd stopped caring about that somewhere around the time I was fighting for my life. The venue called Chloe within an hour. They put everything on hold. Couldn't proceed with an event potentially funded by stolen money. Chloe called Sarah. Sarah called me. My phone started ringing while I was doing the breathing exercises my physical therapist showed me. I let it go to voicemail 3 times. When I finally answered, Sarah's voice came through, screaming so loud I held the phone away from my ear. She called me every name under the sun, said I was destroying her family, vindictive, cruel. She'd never forgive me for ruining Chloe's special day. I waited until she ran out of steam, the screaming dissolving into those big, dramatic sobs she'd always used for sympathy. Then I said the only thing that mattered. You asked me to wait for my surgery so your sister could have her wedding. You let me get to the point where I almost died. And now you're upset that I'm not waiting to file for divorce? The line went quiet, save for her ragged breathing. Then she tried a different tactic, her voice soft, pleading. Begging me to hold off just 1 more week so Chloe could have her day, then we could deal with our problems. I told her the wedding was cancelled. And I hung up while she was mid-sentence. The nurses told me later that afternoon my vitals had improved significantly after that call. My blood pressure dropped to normal for the first time since admission. Ending my marriage was apparently better for my health than staying in it had ever been. The wedding was officially cancelled that evening. I heard through Mark that Chloe's fiancé, Liam, had called everything off, not just the ceremony, but their entire relationship. He found out she'd accepted $14,000 from her sister without questioning whether it was okay. Apparently, Liam asked Chloe point-blank if she'd known the money came from our emergency fund without my permission. When she hesitated, he knew she'd had doubts but taken it anyway. He told her anyone willing to take money from a sick person for a party wasn't someone he wanted to build a life with. He walked out that same night. Sarah called me 6 more times over the next 2 days. I ignored every call, finally blocking her number when her voicemails alternated between rage and desperate pleading. Her mother, Brenda, tried too, leaving a message about how I was tearing the family apart, how heartless I was toward Chloe. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. I was done explaining myself to people who thought a wedding was more important than someone's life. The hospital discharged me after 8 days. A list of restrictions longer than my arm, wound care instructions, 3 medications, a follow-up to assess permanent kidney damage. Mark drove me home. Sarah had cleared out about half her stuff, but the apartment was chaos. Drawers hanging open, closet doors ajar, like she'd packed in a rage. A note on the kitchen counter, she was staying with Chloe, I'd destroyed both their lives over money that would have been paid back anyway. I read it once, then threw it away. The delusion was beyond anything I wanted to engage with. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in over a week. Despite the pain and the emotional devastation, I felt more at peace than I had in months. The wedding was cancelled, my marriage was over. But that was just the beginning of how everything fell apart. The divorce hearing happened exactly 11 weeks after I filed. It felt both impossibly long and shockingly fast. I spent those weeks recovering physically, going to physical therapy 3 times a week, and meeting Mr. Thompson twice a week to prepare. My kidney function test showed I'd lost 40% capacity on the damaged side. Permanent, the specialist said. It would affect me for the rest of my life. Regular monitoring, dietary restrictions, careful with meds and alcohol. All because Sarah prioritized a party over my health. The lawsuit against Chloe was scheduled for the week after the divorce. Mr. Thompson explained we were pursuing it separately to strengthen both cases. Sarah hired a lawyer who was coaching her to play the victim. I heard through Mark she planned to paint me as controlling and vindictive. The morning of the divorce hearing, I put on the only suit that still fit after losing 15 pounds in the hospital. Mr. Thompson met me outside the courthouse. He said the judge had reviewed all our documentation, medical records, emergency fund statements, timeline, our case was solid. The hearing felt mundane, surreal. Questions and answers in a bland courtroom smelling of old wood and disappointment. Sarah sat across from me, with her attorney, in a conservative dress, minimal makeup, styled to look sympathetic. Her lawyer argued the emergency fund was marital property, she had equal right to access, family loans were normal, and my medical emergency was unpredictable. Mr. Thompson calmly dismantled each argument. He walked through the timeline. Sarah took the money 3 weeks before my diagnosis, hid the withdrawal, refused to return it even after learning I needed emergency surgery. He presented my text messages explaining medical urgency, Sarah's replies calling me dramatic, her voicemails saying the wedding was more important, hospital records showing I nearly died from a preventable complication. The judge, a woman in her 60s, had taken notes without expression. But when she spoke, her tone was ice cold. She said while marital assets are usually divided equally, this case involved financial decisions that directly endangered my health and life. Sarah's actions constituted a breach of fiduciary duty to the marriage. The ruling came down harder than I expected. Sarah was responsible for 60% of my medical bills, about $11,000 in installments. No spousal support, despite her request. And she had to immediately repay $7,000 from her share of our remaining marital assets. Her lawyer argued the penalties were excessive, but the judge cut her off. Someone who chose a party over their spouse's life-saving surgery shouldn't expect the court's sympathy. Sarah's face went white. I watched her whisper angrily to her lawyer, but I felt nothing, just a tired sense of relief. The lawsuit against Chloe the following week was shorter, but somehow more bitter. Chloe actually showed up, with Brenda, her mother, who kept glaring at me like I'd personally destroyed their family. Chloe's attorney argued she'd received the money as a gift, had no knowledge of my medical situation, that family loans didn't require formal consent. Mr. Thompson presented the timeline. Chloe's wedding planning accelerated right around the withdrawal. Text messages between the sisters discussing how I'd probably be upset but get over it. Most damaging, a voicemail Chloe left Sarah 2 days before my surgery, asking if I'd really agreed to the loan, because Liam was getting suspicious. That voicemail destroyed Chloe's defense. It proved she knew there was a problem with the money's origin, but took it anyway. The judge ruled Chloe had to repay the full $14,000, plus 18 months of interest. Since she couldn't pay a lump sum, her wages would be garnished $400 a month until the debt was satisfied. Chloe started crying. Brenda stood up, shouting that I was ruining a young woman's life over money, that I should be ashamed. The bailiff escorted them out. I sat there, simultaneously vindicated and exhausted by the spectacle. In the weeks after both court cases, I learned how thoroughly everything had collapsed for Sarah and Chloe. The wedding was never rescheduled. Liam got engaged to someone else within 10 months. Chloe had to take 2 jobs to cover the garnishment and her share of the apartment she now shared with Sarah. She lost her event planning position when word got around about the lawsuit. Sarah was working at a call center, sleeping on an air mattress in their 1-bedroom living room, paying off her portion of my medical bills in installments that would take her 4.5 years. Her mother, Brenda, stopped trying to contact me entirely, telling anyone who'd listen that I destroyed her daughters over a medical issue that wasn't even that serious, conveniently forgetting the sepsis and organ damage. Mark told me Sarah tried to reach out to some of our mutual friends, but most people had heard the full story and weren't interested in maintaining friendships with someone who'd let their spouse nearly die for a wedding. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I adopted a cat. An orange tabby from the shelter. I named him Gus, as a dark joke about my kidney, which made my therapist shake her head. Gus didn't care about my medical history or my failed marriage. He just wanted food and lap time. And there was something deeply healing about having a living thing in my apartment who needed me without any complicated emotional baggage. I was still dealing with the physical aftermath. Reduced kidney function meant I tired easily, had to watch my protein, and had regular appointments. The specialist said I'd probably be fine for decades if I took care of myself, but any future kidney problems would be more serious because I was already compromised. The financial recovery took longer than the physical or emotional. Between medical bills and legal fees, I'd spent close to $30,000. Even with Sarah's court-ordered payments, I was still paying off credit cards and payment plans. But I managed a down payment on a small house with my share of the divorce settlement. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every mortgage payment, I felt grateful I'd gotten out before Sarah could make any more unilateral decisions with our money. Sometimes late at night, I'd think about that moment in the hospital. Lying there with IVs and surgical drains, while my wife complained about wedding logistics. And I'd feel this strange mixture of grief and relief. I'd lost my marriage, my health, a chunk of my savings. But I'd gained something more valuable, the absolute certainty that I'd never again let someone make me feel like my life was negotiable. People ask me sometimes if I regretted filing for divorce from a hospital bed. If I thought I'd been too harsh or moved too fast. And my answer is always the same. When someone asks you to postpone life-saving surgery for their sister's party, you don't wait to file for divorce. You just save yourself the time. What do you think about that?